Oh, wow. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Moshe. What's the name of your daughter who's always smiling at us at the picture?
What, on my Zoom?
Yeah.
Oh, it's from about 6 years ago. Shana is her name.
Which school is she now?
What school? There's no school.
Which one is she registered at?
Oh, Jewish Day.
Is she going to high
Very
school?
quiet.
I am quiet.
Yeah, Shiur. Is he quiet for you as well?
No, it's okay.
Oh gosh, 1 second. We'll just put this on.
It's funny that when you said which school she registered at, it reminds me of when they used to do the thing in Mir, the government, every year or so, to check how many people were there. There was always a very large discrepancy between how many people actually registered there and how many people actually were learning there.
They still do these registration things.
Yeah, sure. I'm saying there was a lot of Bachrim who were in the Mir or registered in the Mir.
Yes.
That was about it.
Right.
Okay.
What daf are we on? Ein Zayin.
Ein Chesmond base. 78. Ein Chesmond base. 78b.
Right.
I'm trying to think of something sweet to say about Shavuos, but we'll just get going with the daf.
There's only 4 of us.
Yes, that's right. It's not the quantity. It's the
Most
quality.
convenient. Yeah, it's also not the most convenient either, but
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll hold the daf Ein Chesmond base, and we're discussing still the measurements of different items, how much you have to take in order to be chayav on Shabbos, and what's considered a significant amount. So Gemara says like this: Ein Chesmond base, just after the Mishnah. Chevel, and the Mishnah says by a rope it has to be enough to make a handle for a pot, and by a reed it's enough to make a hook for a sieve. Very the Gemara. Chevel, a rope. Why do you need to have so much to make a handle for a pot? Make it for a basket. Make it just a little bit of a rope, just to make it a hook for a sieve. A hook is much, much smaller than a handle. If that's the case, why by a rope do you have to have as much as taking a whole handle? A little bit of a hook should be okay. Answers more. Since the rope scratches in the keli, people don't do that. That means when a person uses rope, which is a very heavy-duty material, he puts it only on a basket. There's a very lot of background noise. I don't know, is it mine or yours? Doesn't matter. Okay, that means a rope is a heavy-duty material. Therefore, it's only used as a basket. While a reed is much softer, so a reed is used as a hook. So therefore, when you take a rope, you have to be enough to make a whole handle. When you take a reed, it's enough that it should just be as a hook. On hutzin, palm branches, in order enough to make a handle for a basket made out of lulav branches. Sieve is a kind of bark which grows around the tree. They used to use bark as a sieve. If you ever see a round tree, sometimes you have this like thin wood which grows around it, and then what happens is it's actually porous. Water can get through it. So they would put at the bottom of the sieve and let the water go through, wine go through, and it would sieve the wine. Vavav, a bit of gravy stain. What would you do with a bit of a gravy? So the answer is, in the older days, they used to bake bread, pita, and how would they bake it? If you remember, they would stick the bread against the walls of the oven. Now, if you ever stick a bread on a fire, on a heat source, it'll stick. So what do? You have to put some oil or some grease there. So grease, how much grease do you have to take? Enough to be able to put underneath a small cake. When you put underneath a small cake, that the cake shouldn't burn, when you stick it in the oven, that's good enough. A wafer. Shiur, how big? Kesela, the size of a sela. Another brisa says the size of a fig. It's the same measurement. Obviously, a coin is much smaller than a fig. What we mean is the surface area of a coin and the surface area of a fig is the same. If you were to stick a fig against an oven and you don't want it to get stuck, you have to put a little bit of gravy, a little bit of tallow, whatever it's called, a bit of grease, that it shouldn't stick. So if you stuck a coin, you'd have the same thing. So it has to be enough that the grease can make sure that the bread or whatever you're sticking on the oven should not get stuck and burnt. Muchin, a piece of cloth which is not formed into anything. In order to make a small ball. In the olden days, little children would play with balls. And if you had like fabric, pieces, tufts of wool, what you would do is you would squash it into a ball and give it to the little children to play. So enough that the child has got what to do with it is considered important and not allowed to carry it. Nia, paper. As we explained yesterday, there was such a thing called, like we have on the N6 toll road, you have to pay, you get a receipt, and then you don't have to pay anymore. So the same thing, they would have a tax. If you wanted to cross a bridge, you'd have to pay a tax. You'd get a piece of paper as a receipt that you've paid the taxes, and then you could go and cross the bridge. So that was considered a kesher shel moichsin, a receipt from a tax collector. And the halacha was that a piece of paper that was big enough to write on it a tax collector's receipt, that was forbidden to carry on Shabbos. Tana, kamo kesher moichsin, how big is that? Shtei 2 big letters. If you take a piece of paper that you can write on it 2 big letters, because that's what the size of a tax collector's receipt is forbidden. We have a brisa that says 2 normal letters. We have a contradiction. One brisa says that if you want to carry a piece of paper, if it's big enough to write 2 big letters, 2 tax collector letters, then it is forbidden. But smaller, it's okay. It's not chayav chatos. And then we have another brisa that says no, a normal letters, and the more gives 2 answers. The second brisa, which says 2 letters, and it seems to be saying even 2 small letters, does not mean literally 2 small letters. It means 2 big letters. And the brisa sometimes does not tell us all the details. And when the brisa said 2 letters, it meant 2 big letters. There's 3 measurements. There's 2 normal size letters. There's 2 big letters. And there's 2 letters with a bit of parchment spare to be able to hold on. The way they used to hold on to the receipt, they would have, let's say this was the receipt. So you have enough space to write 2 letters, but you have to display it to the tax collector when you're walking through to show that I've paid my taxes. So if you can fit 2 letters here, but you still need a bit of space to hold on to it. Says Rava, that 2 letters, which are small, with a handle space, is the same amount of size as 2 big letters. So it's not a contradiction between the brises. One brisa says 2 big letters, right? That's very big. The other brisa says 2 small letters, but it means 2 small letters with a handle space, with the amount of space you need to be able to hold on to the parchment. To be able to hold on to the parchment, and 2 small letters is the same amount of size of parchment that you need to write 2 big letters. Says more Mesri. The person finds a piece of paper which has been rubbed out, which can't be used as a tax collector anymore because it's been rubbed out, you don't write it in. We're going to be discussing this at great length, so it's good to get clear. Shtar Pavua is a document that somebody owes money, but the payment has already been made. So let's say I come to you and I say to you, can I borrow £1,000? So you say, okay, but write me a shtar, right? I owe you £1,000. And now I paid it up. So I don't owe you the £1,000 anymore. So that piece of paper, what value does it have? Can anybody suggest what value does that piece of paper have? What can you do with such a piece of paper? I borrowed from you £1,000.
Nothing.
What? Nothing. Well, one thing you could do that is wrap up a bottle of perfume. That's one of the things they used to do with paper in those days. But you're right, it doesn't have much value. So therefore, really, such a thing, if you carry it on Shabbos, you shouldn't be chayav. Says the Gemara, it says the Vaisa, there is another option. If there's blank spaces around the parchment for which you can write a receipt, so then there's more that can be done with it. So the Vaisa carries on, if in the white spaces around there's enough space, or the entire thing, if it's got enough blank spaces to write a receipt from a tax collector, or if the entire thing is big enough to wrap around a bottle of perfume, chayav, vim lav, if not, pot. Says the Gemara. When we say two letters, mean two big letters, shapit, that's very good. Rava said that when we need a blank parchment which has already been rubbed out, how much space do you need and be able to write two letters of a tax collector, plus the area to hold on to it. But here we have a document that's already been rubbed out, which is already no longer valid. So therefore, you've got space around the document to put the tax collector's receipt. Now, if you've got the space to put the tax collector's receipt around, and you're carrying it, holding on to where the old document was, then you do not need extra space to be able to hold on to it. And since you do not need extra space to hold on to it, so therefore you shouldn't need more than that. And it's a cash on again. Rava said, we have a advice that says 2 letters is enough to be carried. And we said normally 2 letters is not enough to be carried. You need 2 big letters. So Sheish says, whenever we say 2 letters, we mean 2 big letters. According to him, we have no problems. Rava said that 2 letters indeed means a smaller size letters, but you also need space to hold on to the document. Asks the Gemara, when you've got a shtar which has been paid up, and around the space of the shtar, there's space to write the receipt of a tax collector, so that you shouldn't need more space to hold on to it, because you've got the space where the shtar used to be. And yet the Brisa says that it has to be the size of just 2 little letters. And that won't be big enough to write a tax collector's receipt. So therefore, it says, Kasha, according to Rava, it's like a shver. Why do you need such a little bit of space just to write 2 letters without the handle, when indeed it's not enough space to be able to write a tax collector's receipt? Let me see if I've got a picture, sorry.
Why do you need a handle? Why can't you just fold the paper in half and just hold the back of the paper?
Because when you would show it to somebody, you would need the way they would show it. Let me just see if it's got. That was interesting. I don't do any pictures on these pages. When they would show it to the tax collector, he would have to have a. Let's say the whole receipt was here. So holding it in the palm of his hand, it would slip away. So he would hold on to it. Holding on to it would mean that would lose space. When you've got a document which is not useful, then you have to be able to do something in order to be chayav. So either you can wrap a bottle of perfume, but then it has to be quite big. Alternatively, you've got spaces around to put the tax collector's receipt on. But Rava holds that when we say 2 letters, we mean 2 small letters. 2 small letters, you can't put a tax receipt on. The tax receipt was always 2 big letters. Elamai. Rava says that's not a problem because normally you need space to hold on to it, and that's that's the extra space the Bryce is talking about. But here we're talking about a document that half of it, most of it, is a shtar which has already been paid up. A shtar which has already been paid up, you can hold on to it in the area where the shtar has been paid up, so you don't need more space. So according to Rava, it's shver. How can that be big enough to be useful? The space around is not enough to write 2 small letters. What says Kasham? A person takes out a tax collector's receipt. If you haven't yet shown it to the tax collector, once you've used the receipt and you've crossed the bridge and you've shown the receipt to the tax collector, then you do not need any more the receipt. Why don't you need the receipt anymore? Imagine you go on M6 toll road. Imagine you'd buy the receipt at the beginning and then you have to go through the toll. So then there's no point afterwards, because what's the purpose of such a receipt? Since there's no purpose in it anymore, so therefore if you carry it on Shabbos, you're potter. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda says, even after you've used the tax collector's receipt, you still need it because you need to show it. Now the Gemara asks the Kasha, what purpose does the tax receipt have after you've already used it? And the Gemara over here gives 3 different answers. They're all very, very similar. In fact, in one of the verses said there's no machlokes. Again, you've had to pay to cross the bridge, and now you've crossed the bridge. Is there any purpose in holding on to this receipt? If there's no purpose in holding on to the receipt, then it's a useless piece of paper. A useless piece of paper, you're not chayav for carrying on Shabbos. So that's the machlukas tanoi. So the Gemara says like this. My benai, what is the machlukas? The Gemara says 3 answers. There are people who run for the taxes. So I have shown the person that I paid my taxes. But he has runners that make sure that I paid it. Those runners might catch up with me and say to me, hey, did you pay the tax? So even after I've displayed the receipt, it's still kedai, it's still worthwhile to keep it. There's the high-ranking tax collector, and there's the small tax collector who's underneath it. So what happens is like this, that you've shown it to the small tax collector. So you've shown it to the important tax collector, to the important one. And he is satisfied that you've paid. But you're scared there's a small chance that the one underneath him, the deputy might want to check up on you. So therefore, sometimes you keep it just to be able to show the deputy. After you've used the receipt, you still want to hold on the receipt. Why? Because maybe one day you'll go to another bridge, and then you want to show the person, look, you want to see what a trustworthy person is? I am. Last time when I went on the other bridge, I paid my taxes, so you should trust me. So there's a machlokes over here. A receipt for taxes which has already been paid. Is there any point in keeping it? Sometimes the government, I think, say to you, should keep on to all your tax cheshbonos, I think, for 7 years or something. So here's a question of like this. Is there any point in keeping on to your tax receipts? If there's no point carrying it, so carrying it on Shabbos to be potter. If there is a point, you're chayav. And the more brings machlokas tanoim, and the more explains 3 explanations why this man Doman says you're chayav. Either because of the runners of the tax collectors, that they chase up after people afterwards. Alternatively, for the deputy tax collectors. Alternatively, for an alternate tax collector, that you want to be able to show him that in the past you paid your taxes well. We've got now a shtikla sugya regarding a shtar which has already been paid. A person takes out a document that is owed. That means, again, let's just stick to one example. Let's say I go to Chaim, I say to Chaim, can you lend me £1,000? He says, yes, on condition you give me a document that I owe you. So I write to shtar, I owe you, Chaim, £1,000. I leave it by you. And then, if you carry that shtar on Shabbos, you're chayav. Why? Because it's a very important piece of paper. With it, you're going to claim the £1,000 off. If I've already paid you, and for some reason I have not asked you for the shtar back, and you carry it on Shabbos, according to the Tanna Kama, you're not chayav. Why not chayav? Because that piece of paper is a total waste of time. What does it say? That I owe you £1,000? I don't. I've already paid it. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you're chayav. You're chayav even though you're carrying a piece of paper which says on it actually an untruth. It says a lie. He says, I owe you £1,000 and I don't, I've already paid it. So the question is, why, according to Rabbi Yehuda, are you chayav, Chaim, if you carry a piece of paper saying that I owe you £1,000 and I've already paid up the £1,000? That is, the Gemara is going to give 4 different answers, and you have to hold track over here. So the Gemara says like this. My benai, Omar Yosef, Osadish Shtar Purua Ki benai. Rabbanon Savi, Osadish Shtar Purua, Rabbi Sava Motadish Shtar Purua. The machlokes is like this. This is a document which is saying a lie. What does it say? It says Yehuda Steinberg goes £1,000 to Chaim Hamon, but he doesn't, already paid it. So the Tanna Kama holds, you're not allowed to keep it in your house. Why are you not allowed to keep it in your house? Because one day you may forget that I paid you, and then you might come to claim from it again. So you have a chiyuv to tear it up. In fact, there's an aveva to keep it in your house. Atashkein bo'alecha avlo. Don't leave in your home a lie. And this is a lie. So you've got a mitzvah to get rid of it, and every day that you keep it in your house, you're doing an avera. Since you cannot keep it in your house, so therefore it's totally useless. You can't even wrap up your perfume bottle with it. Why not? Because if you wrap up your perfume bottle with it, in a month's time, you may forget that I paid you, and then you might come to use it. Since you can't do anything with it, you can't wrap up your bottle of perfume because you're not allowed to keep it in your house. Therefore, the only choice you have to do is throw it in a bin. So if you carry it on Shabbos, you're carrying a useless item, and therefore you're not chayav. Rabbi Yehuda says there's no issa in keeping a paid document in the house. At the end of the day, I know and you know that it's been paid up. So now you're allowed to keep it. What will you keep it for? You'll keep it to wrap up your perfume. Since you'll keep it up to wrap up your perfume, it's got value. Since it's got value, if you carry it on Shabbos, you're chayav. That is the first explanation which in the Machlokes Tanna Kamma and Rabbi Yehuda. Machlokes is you're allowed to keep in your house a document which says a lie, and the nafkamina would be if you're allowed to then keep it to wrap up your perfume, and therefore whether it's a issa to carry it on Shabbos. Is it clear? It's quite clear. That's quite straightforward. It says another pshat. Everybody agrees that if it's been paid up, you have to get rid of it, and therefore the second I paid you the £1,000, you have to throw that shtar in the bin. Here they're arguing about a much more complicated case. And this is a fundamental shaila which comes up above Mitzvah a lot as Kedai to keep track of it. If you come to me with a shtar saying, Yehuda, you owe me £1,000, I have two ways to get rid of not having to pay the shtar. What are the two ways I can say that I don't have to pay? Does anybody guess? What are the two ways that I can deny payment? Either I can say it's a forgery, and if I don't have to pay you, or I can say that I've paid it. That is the two arguments that I can say. Right? If you bring a shtar that I owe you £1,000, there's two ways you can argue. Either it's a forgery or I've paid it. The question is like this. To say that I've paid it is not very good, because if I've paid it, why in the world have I not taken the document off you? But a forgery, that's a valid argument, because at the end of the day, you have to prove that's not a forgery. There's a machlokes, a fundamental machlokes. If I say to you that I have paid it, I've paid it, and now I say, well, listen to me, believe me, because at the end of the day, if I was lying, I could. The fact is, how do I know that it's not a forgery? Since I've admitted the shtar is a good one, the only thing I'm arguing now is that I paid it. I can no longer say that it's a forgery, because at the end of the day, I've agreed it's a good shtar. The only argument is now whether I paid it. And for that, the proof of the fact that you're holding the shtar is great enough that you can mechayev me to pay. Mashenkin, the other man says, no, since without me admitting that it's a good shtar, I could have argued it's a forgery, therefore, even now that I say that I paid it, I don't have to pay it. That it's not a forgery, I don't have to pay it. So Gemara says like this. You have to be mekayim it. And since you have to be mekayim it, and you can't, it's a useless piece of document. You've got a document that you owe £1,000. But I can just as well argue that it's a forgery. Since I can argue it's a forgery, so therefore it's a useless piece of paper. You can't argue it's a forgery, and therefore it's a good shtar you can claim with it. The Brisa uses the words before it's paid and after it's paid, which according to this, we're not discussing. Everybody agrees we talk about where it hasn't been paid. It says the word at the top of the page. If you've got a document and I agree that I owe you, everybody agrees that that document is valuable, and therefore if you carry it on Shabbos, you're chayav. The question is regarding a document where I say that I have paid it, according to Rabbi Yehuda, I'm not allowed to say that I paid it. And therefore, since I'm not allowed to say that I paid it, therefore the document is still value, and therefore if you carry it on Shabbos, you're chayav. Actually, the Tanna Kamma holds no, there's no value. Since you can't prove that the shtar is not a forgery, so therefore we consider the shtar to be useless, and therefore if you carry it on Shabbos, you're not chayav. Third explanation, and therefore the shtar is not much use. There's a very important machlokes about Krisin Sheva and Krisin Sheva. I'll tell you a story that happened to me, and it's illustrated for me, this machlokes of Krisin Sheva. It's machlokes we have up to today. I once needed to borrow money. I had the money. I had to borrow. So I went to a friend of mine. He said to me, do me a favor. I don't want to have to chase you. Write me a open check. That's £1,000. So write him an open check for £1,000. And in that way, he's always got the ability to go bank the check and then gets his £1,000. What happened was, when I came to pay him, he could not find the check. He had lost it. Now, what would you say the halacha is? Do I still need to pay him or not? This is a machlokes. One man says, of course you have to pay. You owe him the money. Of course you have to pay. Oh, maybe he's going to use their shtar. Maybe he'll use the check, and then you'll end up having to pay twice. What you have to do is get from him a piece of paper saying that you no longer owe. And in that way, if he ever brings out the check, you can always say to him, look, I've got a shiva, I've got a receipt that I paid you, therefore you can't use my check. The other man says, no, it means for the rest of my life, I'm going to have to look after this receipt. And that's a massive pain in the neck. Since he lost it, it's his problem. He has to find a way to find the document. Otherwise, I don't have to constantly walk around with the shiva. Again, that was just an example to illustrate it. The machlokes is when a person has a shtar and somebody paid it up, can he insist that I want the original shtar, or do we say no? Write a receipt. Says the Gemara that over here we're talking about somebody where the chayv has already been paid up. Right? Again, going back to my example, I bought from Chaim Hamul £1,000, wrote him a shtar, and I have paid it. But the question is like this: he's now carrying it on Shabbos. By carrying it on Shabbos, is he carrying anything of value? Says the Tanna Kama, no, he's not carrying anything of value at all. Why not? Because I've already paid it up. That debt doesn't exist, and if he's carrying a useless piece of paper. Yehuda says, yes, he does. Why? Because since the halacha is that in Kos and Shover, we don't write a receipt, the only way that he can get the money is if he shows me the original shtar. So let's say I paid him up without him giving back the original shtar. If I later come to him and say to him, I want that shtar, and therefore without it, I want my money back, therefore he has to display the original shtar. Since he has to display the original shtar, therefore, even though I've already paid it, I might insist later I want the shtar. And since I insist later that I want the shtar, he wants to keep it in order to be able to get his money. We're talking about a completely different story. Not where the lender has the money. It's where I have the shtar. I bought from Chaim. Chaim has the shtar. And then he gave me back the shtar once I paid him. And now I'm walking around with the shtar, which is completely paid up. So, according to Tanna Kama, to use the shtar, what's the purpose of it? According to Rabbi Yehuda, the fact that I've got a document saying that I've paid up my debts means that next time I want to borrow money, people lend it to me quicker. And therefore, I want to keep the shtar. Okay. Says the Gemara, a leather in order to make with it a kamir. Rav asks of Nachman a list of questions regarding leather. How much leather? How much leather do you have to take? Skin. It's not enough to make an amulet. The Ritva already points out he knew this. He just asked this as an introduction to the next question. If it's not yet been worked upon, there are different stages in leather, right? There's leather which has been completely made into parchment, and there's leather which hasn't. So he said, what about leather which has not been tanned? How much do you need to take? It makes no difference, it's the same measure. Sorry, I made a mistake. But somebody who tans it, how much does need to tan to be chayav? Makes no difference. Skin which has not been tanned, how much? So he asked him three questions. A piece of leather, how much do you need to carry? Enough to make an amulet, right? Let's say 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. How much do you need to tan leather in order that you should be chayav? 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. What about leather that's not been tanned? How much do you need to be carried? Again, he said the same thing. How do I know this? Because it's an I'm a lab, somebody whitens cloth. I'm a nap, it smooths out. It whitens wool. I'm a nap, it smooths it out, and colors it. And he spins it, sure, he can sit doubled. The shiur is sit. Sit is the distance between the two fingers, the index finger and the middle finger, when it is stretched out as much as possible. Stretch out your two middle fingers, and then the distance between the tip of one finger and the tip of the other finger, that's called roichav hasit. We've got tefach, amor. People don't always know this. The distance between this finger and that finger is called roichav hasit. Roichav hasit double is the amount of wool you need to do in order to clean it. The Rishonim say that the distance between your thumb and your index finger is double the distance between the tip of your index finger and your middle finger. Look at your fingers, right? The distance between the tip of your thumb and the tip of your index finger should be double the distance between the index finger and your middle finger, right? If you work it out. So he says, since it's going to be for spinning, Shiur ketov. The Shiur is the same as spinning. But since it's made to be worked on, the Shiur is like as if it's been worked on. A piece of skin of leather which you've got no intention to tan it, what's it in? There's no difference. That means Rav over here says, Rav Nachman said a very big chiddush. Rav Nachman said there's no difference between the amount of leather which is being tanned and leather which has not been tanned, as regarding how much you need of it to be carried to be chayim on Shabbos. From here to the rest of the Amot, the Gemara is going to challenge this one assumption with easy questions, easy answers. But it's good to have the assumption clear in order that we should have the questions clear. Rava says, there is no difference. Rav Nachman, I keep saying, Rava asked the question, Nachman asked it. Rav Nachman says, there is no difference between leather which has been worked on and leather which has not been worked on for the amount you need to carry to be chayv on Shabbos. Eisvi, says the Gemara. Ask you a kasha. Amoitzi samonim dais shvuin kedei litzvus ben dugma le'ivahom. You need enough to color in a dugma, that's a sample, le'ivo. Le'ivo is an interesting thing. The way they used to weave in those days is they used to take a ball of thread and throw it back and forth across all the strings which were up and down. But in order for the thread not to unravel too quickly, they would put the thread into like a container, stuff the container with cloth, and that would make that the thread would come out slowly. That's called an iro. The iro was the cloth they used to use to block up what's called the bobbin. That's the English word for it. But guys, I'm not being soaked. These are different kinds of plants which are used for coloring. Enough to dye a cloak, clothes which you put on top of the head covering. So you see clearly that dye which has been soaked and ready to be used is much more chomer than dye which is not ready to be used. Similarly, by leather which has been used, ready to be used, should be more chomer than leather which has not been tanned. Answers a person doesn't make the effort to soak dyes just to make a tiny bit of cloth. When the dye is already ready, so then you would do anything. You'll make a little bit of cloth colored. But when it's not yet ready and you need to make the dye, a person is not going to make it unless it's a significant amount. By leather, a person will use a small amount of leather. Seeds to plant them in before you plant them, less than a gergeres, less than a fig. That if you're carrying seeds, let's say you're carrying little seeds, right? Pea seeds or carrot seeds. Now, one seed is a tiny, tiny amount. So says the Talmud, you have to carry a number like the size of a fig, or Yehuda says 5 of them. Right? After you plant them, fertilize or thin sand, enough to fertilize one leaf of a cabbage. Krisha is a kind of cress. So you see that even one plant is enough. Before you plant something, you need to take 5 seeds. After you plant something, even one plant is enough. So you see that there is a difference between something which is ready to be used and something which is not ready to be used. And says, well, when it's being grown, A person doesn't go out in the street carrying one seed to plant. A person doesn't bother. You don't go to the shop and ever buy one seed. You buy hundreds, dozens. Therefore, one seed alone is not considered important. Once it's grown, then it is considered important. A pop of cabbage is already something of value. Ma'ashein came. Leather, even before it's tanned, says the Gemara, that it can be used. People do use it. Says the Gemara, Baritit, clay, to become a delict before you mix it. Tanya, Moidu Chacham Navashim and the Moitzi Shevchin Shasuam Shashon Deovis. Dirty water, the shears of this. What can you use dirty water for? In order to stir with it, to mix with it, clay. After you mix it, Tanya, cool. That before it's mixed, how much do you need to use? Then you have to have a whole reverse of water to mix the clay, which is a lot of clay. After you've already mixed the clay, how much are you chayav for? Only for the most minute amount. So you see that the most minute amount is enough to be chayav once it's mixed, once you've made the clay. But before the clay is ready to be used, you need to have much more. And so more, a person doesn't make clay just to make a tiny amount. If he's already going to get clay ready, he's going to use a very, very lot. Therefore, you can't compare it to leather, where a person will use leather even if it's only a small amount. Toshima, there are 3 kinds of leather, and they're called as follows: matzah, v'chippah, v'diftera. If you speak to a sefer, they'll know about these. There's 3 kinds of leather: matzah, chippah, and diftera. Matzah kemashmo, like its meaning, it hasn't been salted, it hasn't had flour on, and it hasn't had gallstones on it. That means, what happens is, when they would make leather, they would have 3 stages to the process. One stage of the process was treated with salt. The next stage was treated with flour. And the next stage was treated with gallnuts. Each stage, for leather to be ready properly to be written on, you have to have all 3 stages. So that stage, when it was very, very small, you only needed Shiur. How much is the Shiur? In order to wrap a small weight, a camel. A quarter of a river, which is a measurement in Pumpadisa. The smallest measurement they used in Pumpadisa. In the olden days, weights were made out of metal, which wasn't so strong, like lead, which can easily get worn away. So what you had to do is, in order to make sure that the weights did not get ruined, people would wrap their weights in leather. So a piece of leather which is big enough to wrap a weight, that is the size of a leather which a person's chayav if it's the least usable leather. That's called matzah. Chippah de meliach, it's been salted, but no flour and no gallstones. No gallnuts. In order to make an amulet. But it's not even been, it's done 2 stages, but not the gallnuts. In order to write a get. Nowadays, the document to write a get is very, very big. It's bigger than an A4. But the minhag hadin, you only need to write a tiny amount on a get. It's enough that you could just write the very, very basic details. So therefore, a smallest parchment was a piece of parchment to write a get. That you see that you need a much bigger measurement. Rava said that the measurement of non-tanned leather is the same measurement as tanned leather. Here we see that non-tanned leather, you need to be able to wrap it a weight. So you see it's much more than that. There we talk about leather that's already being cooked. Since it's already being cooked, therefore it can't be used for anything better. Once it can't be used for anything better, then that leather indeed will more make. But then a beggar shlosha closes 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim. The medras is tomei if you sit on it, as Zov sits on it. A sack of arbo is 4 tvachim by 4. Ha'oil leather chabisha al chabisha. Mapot samat shishal shisha. Bein the medras, bein the mace. That the same measurements that we just said over here for sitting to become Tomei, that's the same measurements you need to have to be Chayav for carrying. So you see that carrying is got the same, we're more makel, that if something can't be used, then we're more makel. And says the Gemara, there we talk about boiled leather, where it's boiled to the extent that it cannot be done, you can only sit on it. And therefore, since the whole purpose only for sitting, therefore, indeed, only a measurement which is big enough to sit on. Masha'en Kain, the Rava was talking about leather, which can be used later for something else. It's not being boiled. And therefore, Rava says that a smaller measure is chayav. I just say one very ancient thing. And that is like this. There's a very big shaila in the poskim. Is one allowed to add spices to the matzah? You know, our matzah is made out of flour and water. Is one allowed to add sugar, oil, and things like that? It's a big machlokes in the poskim. Nowadays, we don't do it because nowadays our matzahs were machmir and machmir and machmir. But the truth of that is, there's a very strong raya that one can. Because then in the Beis HaMikdash, one of the things they used to bring as a korban mincha, there was big matzahs in the korban mincha. And the korban mincha always had oil and other things with it, levoina. So you see that you can make matzah even with oil. But from this Gemara, there's a proof that matzahs should not have anything except for flour and water. Does anybody know the proof from this Gemara? The Gemara says there were 3 kinds of leather, and they gave them names. One name was matzah, one was chippah, and one was diftera. Why was matzah leather called matzah? Because they had nothing done to it. No gallnuts, no flour, no nothing. So we see matzah refers to something that nothing's been added to it whatsoever. And therefore it was called matzah because that leather had nothing done to it, like matzah that has nothing done to it. So you see that for something to be considered matzah, it has to have no extra things added to it. Okay, there you go. Shkrech, I appreciate that we managed it. I know it's difficult on a Friday morning, but it's good to make a certain, try our best. We'll see how we can. Mr. Hashem, have a very, very good Shabbos. Hatzlach with everything. It's the fascinating thing that the Shvatim, all the numbers come to a round number. And the idea is that when a person, let's say there's 1,000, like a 1,000-piece puzzle, if it's missing one piece, the whole puzzle is not the same. Klali saw each shevet was 1,000, all finished off into round numbers to show that every yid was important. If there would be one yid less in shevet Uvein, then they want to finish off as 100, they finished off as 99. So Hashem made the nest that each one should finish off the round number to show the importance that without one yid, that number would be a completely different number. Have a very, very good Shabbos. Any questions? No. Okay, right. So we'll turn it off. Very good. Okay, have a very good Shabbos. Very good. Bye.